Hi, good morning, and welcome back. Today we're going to be solving linear inequalities. Now, solving linear inequalities is pretty much the exact same thing as solving linear equations, okay? There's one major difference, but the basics are essentially the same. You're isolating the variable by undoing orders of operations, meaning to say doing additive inverses, multiplicative inverses. You're trying to get everything over to one side, and that's pretty much what you're doing. Now, the only big difference is that with linear inequalities, whenever you are either multiplying or dividing by a negative number, you must flip the sign, okay? So we'll show you a couple of examples here. All right, and we're also going to graph the inequality, and then we're going to write it in interval notation. So first things first, if you need to highlight or if you want to just circle your variable, you can. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to isolate that term by getting rid of all the other ones. So I'm going to subtract 8 to both sides of the inequality. That cancels, and I'm left with 3x is greater than or equal to -3. Now, keep in mind that I still want to get the x by itself, which means to say I need to get rid of the 3. The operation between the 3 and the x is multiplication, so I need to undo multiplication by dividing. Okay? Now, I am dividing by something, but I'm dividing by a positive number, so the sign does not flip. The inequality does not flip. Had this been a -3, then we would have flipped the inequality, but since it is not, okay, we are going to just do the division, get x to be greater than or equal to -3, and we just solved the inequality. Now, we need to graph it. I have and equal to, which means to say we're going to use a closed circle or we're going to use brackets. Okay, and that's going to be around the -3. Oh, sorry, not -3. -1, because -3 divided by 3 is 1. Okay, now it's not going to be an open circle because it's an equal to, so I'm going to highlight it or fill it in. You could also use brackets. You just need to know which direction you're shading first. So I'm going to change to a highlighter, and I'm going to really think about this. So x is the larger number, which means to say -1 has to be the smaller number. So I'm going to shade everything that's bigger than -1, which means if you are using brackets, like that's what it should look like. Okay, now my smallest number is -1, so for my interval I'm going to start from -1 and I'm going towards positive infinity. I always have parentheses with the infinity, and we just talked about using brackets, so I'm going to use a bracket for -1, and that would be my interval notation. Let's do another example. Now here I have parentheses, and I really can't divide both sides by 5 because I have a lot going on the left side. So I'm just going to take that 5 and distribute. I'm preparing the scene here to be able to do some more stuff. So this becomes 5x minus 5. And I want to get that the x is on the same side because they are on different sides right now. So you could do a couple different things. I'm just going to subtract the 5x from both sides. Now I'm subtracting something. Subtracting is okay. I do not need to flip the sign for that. It's only multiplication or division. So that cancels. I'm left with -2x plus 9 is greater than or equal to -5. Now I'm going to get that 9 over to the other side so that I have my x term by itself. Okay, -2x is greater than or equal to -14. Now, again, I'm going to divide both sides by -2. because I want to get rid of the coefficient of -2. Since I am dividing by a negative, now is when we have to apply our inequality rule, which would be to flip the sign. So I'm going to end up with x, but instead of it being greater than or equal to, it's going to be less than or equal to a +7, which means to say I'm either going to use closed circles or brackets. Okay, so you have to flip because we are dividing by a -2. So that's kind of the big warning there. So we're flipping the sign. All right, so now I'm going to find the 7. I'm going to do a closed circle. And since 7 is the largest number that it could be, all the numbers less than 7 are going to be a part of my solution, which means to say if I were doing brackets, my bracket would face the left side and it would go in that direction. Keep in mind I'm going in the -infinity direction, okay? So for my interval notation, my smallest number is -infinity. I always have parentheses for infinities, either positive or negative, and my largest number is 7, which is a closed circle, which means bracket. Whoops. Let's try this again. All right. Okay. So finally, I have lots going on for my very last example. I have 2 sets of parentheses. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute those out. So I have 7x minus 14 plus x is greater than -20 plus 4x minus 12. I notice here that I have some like terms. I have a bunch of x terms. I have a bunch of new constant terms. And so now I'm going to combine my like terms. So on the left side of the inequality, I can combine the 7x and the x. So that becomes 8x minus 14 is greater than, and then I do have like terms on the other side as well, which is -20 and -12. So I'm going to combine those. This becomes -32 plus 4x. Okay, so now I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. Okay, so this becomes 4x minus 14 is greater than -32. I'm going to add 14 to both sides. And so that becomes 4x is greater than -18. Okay, and then I'm going to divide both sides by 4. Now I'm dividing by positive, so I do not need to flip the sign at all. And I'm going to simplify this. So it becomes 9/2, which, by the way, you could also say that x is greater than -4.5. So now this is the first decimal we've had, which is fine. We can have decimals. So what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and in between the -4 and the -5, we're going to have 4.5, which is right there, about, oops, there. Okay, we need to decide, are we using closed circle or open circle? And because it's not an equal to, we're going to use a open circle, or you can use parentheses. So I'm going to do an open circle here at about 4.5. Okay, now x is the largest number. All right, which means I'm going to shade, and actually we're all, and -4.5 is the smallest number, so I'm going to shade in the right direction. Okay, because all the numbers have to be bigger than -4.5. okay? If we were to do the other notation, we'd have parentheses and you'd be going in that same direction. Notice that, sorry, my line is really bad. But you get the point. Notice we're going in the positive infinity direction. My smallest number is negative 4.5, so we have negative 4.5. And we're going towards positive infinity, and I'm going to use parentheses. Now, I already did parentheses at negative 4.5 because we had already talked about the fact there was an open circle, and we were going to use parentheses because it was not an equal to. Okay, so that would be my interval notation. Please make sure you're practicing this. I highly recommend, if you are watching this a second time, pause the video before you, so at each example, pause the video before I start solving it, try it yourself, and then press play and see if what I did matches up to what you did. Okay? See you next video.